LMGs are about to get a big buff, meaning that the weapons that we've been completely ignoring to date are about to be worthy of our attention. In this video, I'll break down the 4 types of LMGs available in the game and offer my advice on which one is the best to be chasing in patch 1.3. Stick around. Guys, it's Skill Up here with another Division video. Today we're going to be digging into the recently announced LMG changes and answer once and for all which LMG is the best one to be using. It's an important question since the lackluster buffs to assault rifles really weren't all that impressive compared to the buffs that LMGs received. And LMGs are in fact now the very best choice to use when you want to use an automatic weapon outside of the optimal range of an SMG. So with all that in mind, let's get stuck straight into it. First up, let's explore the changes that Massive have made to LMGs in the patch 1.3 update. At the moment, LMGs are by far and away the weakest weapon in the game, with horrible rates of fire and truly awful per bullet damage. Massive have essentially tuned these weapons around their large magazines, higher accuracy, excellent optimal range, and their bonus ability to suppress PvE targets. None of these things though are so overwhelmingly useful that we can forgive them for the god-awful DPS that these weapons currently do, and as a result, the vast majority of us have been completely ignoring LMGs up to this point, and rightly so. Massive have made clear that the intent of the LMG is to be a weapon that is sort of capable of forcing enemies back behind cover, a design philosophy that they've really doubled down on with this patch 1.3 change. Now LMGs will get a bonus 25% damage to any target out of cover, which is a really huge increase in DPS. For me personally, I would actually consider this a straight up 25% damage increase because the overwhelming majority of targets that I engage in both PvE and PvP are out of cover. Yes, some NPCs shoot from cover, and yes, on very rare occasions, your PvP targets are also in cover, but those instances are really few and far between. Generally, when we shoot something, it's out in the open. So for this reason, this bonus 25% damage to targets out of cover can really be read as a straight up sort of 25% damage increase, give or take a little bit. So the very first question you're probably going to be asking yourself is an LMG now better than an assault rifle? And the unequivocal answer to this is yes. The faster rate of fire LMGs have similar or better reload times and mag speeds, but has significantly better bonus headshot damage, stability, accuracy, and now have some of the same or better per bullet damage than an assault rifle after this buff. I'm going to be doing a separate video breaking this out in more detail, but for now, just know that assault rifles are a suboptimal choice for this patch versus an LMG. So if an LMG is what we're chasing, then which LMG is best? Well, it's actually really easy to answer that question by looking at the raw values of each LMG type. So let's do that now. There are really sort of 2 broad categories of LMGs. Those are ones with smaller mags and higher rates of fire, such as the L86 and the RPK74. And then there are those with much larger magazines and a slower rate of fire, such as the M249B and the M60. Both of these weapon types fulfill very different purposes. The faster variants function very much like assault rifles, with a mag size of about 30 or 45 bullets, and the intent is to sort of empty your magazine fairly quickly and reload often. These weapons work really well in a variety of contexts, including PvP, where burst damage is really important. The slower rate of fire LMGs are designed for sustained damage. They can achieve very long patterns of fire and can deal huge amounts of damage over time if your target has enough health to soak up that damage, and if you're able to stay out of cover long enough to sort of deal that damage, something that sort of isn't always easy, especially in challenging endgame content. Now, just to be clear on how much damage we're talking about, if we have the base 500 firearms that we'll just use for testing purposes, and we have an AUG in patch 1.3, and we compare that to an M60 in patch 1.3, and we looked at how much damage those 2 weapons could do before they had to reload, you'll find that the AUG will deal around 400,000 damage in about 2.63 seconds, and then it will spend 2.4 seconds reloading. Whereas the M60 M60 will deal over 2 million damage over 16 seconds, and then it will spend about 5 seconds reloading. So in terms of DPS, the LMG is actually 13k more DPS than your AUG is, but it delivers its total damage much more slowly. So you need to be sort of out of cover to deal that damage in that way, which, you know, is obviously quite difficult. And it's, to be honest with you, it's actually really good game design, because game design is really all about trade-offs. It's like you can deal that huge damage, but you need to be out of cover and exposing yourself to do that. So it works really well from that perspective. So when thinking about which LMG is the best LMG, we really need to ask ourselves, what is our overall purpose and playstyle? And then we can choose the LMG that's sort of the best fit for us. So let's start with PvE. If you want to go with the slower rate of fire LMG, your best choice is actually the M60. The M249B has a slightly higher RPM than the M60, but it has about 500 less per bullet damage, meaning that the M60 is absolutely the clear winner here. The M60 is a very strong PvE weapon in patch 1.3, so long as you can stay out of cover long enough to sort of deal that damage. Now, if, however, you prefer the safety of cover and you want to get your damage out fast, then your choices are the L86 or the RPK-74. The L86 has a slightly slower rate of fire and a much smaller magazine size, but it has around 1,000 extra per bullet damage versus the RPK variant. The faster rate of fire on the RPK and the larger mag size are very compelling features that put these two variants neck and neck at first glance. So I went ahead and modeled these two weapons again at the base 500 firearms, and I found that the L86 and the RPK actually deal almost exactly the same DPS at around 97k. The difference, of course, is the speed at which this DPS is dealt, or sort of the total damage is dealt over the course of a magazine. The L86 has better burst fire DPS, which is DPS before you have to reload, and that's at 160k burst fire DPS, compared to the RPK's burst DPS of 146k. While the RPK has better total damage over the course of a magazine with 837k damage dealt before you have to reload, compared to the L86's 655k damage. Now, all of this is a really long way of saying that the L86 deals damage faster than the RPK does, but because the RPK fires for longer, because it has more bullets in his magazine, it will deal more damage before it has to reload. Now, the secret sauce that really sets these two weapons apart is their scaling. Scaling is a bit of a tricky concept to understand, but essentially your weapons gain damage per point in firearms, but the rate at which that damage increases is not constant. It actually is varied across all weapon types. So if you have, say, 1,000 firearms and 2 different weapon types, right? One weapon may gain 1 damage per point in firearms, but another weapon may gain 1.2 damage per point in firearms. And this is what we mean when we say scaling. Now, the best part about the L86 is that it has the highest scaling factor of any LMG type, with 1.35 scaling compared to the RPK, which is sitting at 1.15. For this reason, the L86 will eventually deal near or more damage than the RPK, even despite the difference in their mag sizes, making it, in my opinion, the best LMG in the game if you are looking to deal damage. So, which obviously everyone's trying to do when it comes to shooting a weapon. Now, which sort of segues really neatly into our last point, which is, which LMG is best for PvP. So from the previous analysis, I think that everything that we've said holds true in PvP, just as it did for PvE. First of all, don't be aiming to use an M60. They are not built for PvP because they're meant for very long, slow patterns of fire that just don't really exist in a PvP context. Instead, you're going to want a faster rate of fire LMG. And as we've discovered, the best option here will be the L86 due to its excellent stats and scaling. The RPK is still a fine choice, and we're sort of really splitting hairs here because, so much can change in a PvP context. There's so many variables at play. But if you can get your hands on a really well-rolled L86, then you've really ultimately got yourself the finest automatic weapon in the game for patch 1.3. And that's it, guys. That's my view of the best LMG in patch 1.3. Of course, things may change in the new patch if a new LMG is introduced, but I don't think any new LMGs have been added to the game, so I think it's pretty much locked in at this point. If there is such a change as that, then you can certainly expect a new video from me, but for now, this video should cover all of your bases just fine and dandy leading into patch 1.3. Guys, if you like this video and you found it useful, then a like would be great because it actually really does help grow my channel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, then hit that subscribe button now. I've got tons of videos coming for every weapon change in patch 1.3 and a whole bunch of other info in the lead up to the patch. So if you're keen on that sort of stuff, then do stick around. Thanks very much for watching, guys. I really appreciate your time as always. Take good care, and I'll see you in the Dark Zone. Bye-bye.